Before we play with the equations, let's take a look at this part again. I'm going to grab this and I'm going to roll us back to a different state before we did the cut extrudes. And I noticed that I put the hole over here. I really want it based around where this original guy was because we're going to be doing the equations and stuff. So let's go back and just quickly change it. So we're going to go into Edit Sketch. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this center line. And now I'm going to put a new center line in, except I'm going to send it this way to be the center. Oops. I want it to be the center line that way. So I did not grab the center. Let's try that again. So center line. I want it to be here. I want it to come this way. And horizontally ground. Okay. It's still a construction line. Now I need to fix the dimension here. It's 150 degrees. We want that at 30 degrees. And hit OK. And go up the street light here and rebuild. Good. And then we'll just make hopefully no problems. There we go. So all put together, and now it's associated as close as we can to the original flange. Okay, so now what I want to do, since I am going to be putting some equations in, what I want to do is I want to rename these guys. So I'm going to right click on it, and I'm going to look to where, forget where I change it. It's feature properties? Yeah, feature properties. I'm going to call this the rib, and we change it there. This cut extrude, we'll go to, I wonder if there's a quicker way up here. So we'll come back down here to feature properties again, and we'll call this the bolt hole. Let's see, we're going to want to change our circular pattern, and we'll go feature properties, and this will be the rib pattern. And then that should be it. And we'll just control everything from there. Since we put that all in one thing. Okay, so now we're going to start and we're going to put some equations together. So if I go up to my bar here and I pull it out, I've got tools. Under tools, I can go to not geometric analysis, it's the wrong one. I just said it's fine. We'll go to tools, and the one right below it, we'll go to equations. And equations are going to allow us to play around with things and actually have things set up to where they're going to all be controlled by equations. Basically, what if we change the number of ribs to 1 or 3? When we still want them symmetrically put around, instead of going back and taking care of all that, we can bury it in one thing. So let's add a global variable, and we are going to call it ribs. And so now we can go, 1 second, did I mess something up? Yes, I did. So we'll call it ribs, because I couldn't call it rib because that was that right there. So these are the ribs. And so now we go into an equation and we can sit there and take a look at, we can build an equation out of this. And so what it's going to do is we're going to go to actually inside of the part, and we're going to grab the dimension. Yeah, I got rid of that because it was doing something I didn't want it to do. So let's try this again. We'll go to Tools. We will go into Equations, Global Variable. Once again, we're going to call it Ribs. And the equation. So I'm going to click on the rib pattern here and click on 6. And why is that not coming up now? Delete all that. Now that the rib pattern's highlighted, and just click on, there we go, click on 6. So that's what I wanted it to do. Let's do this one more time. So let's pre-select it so we can see it. Maybe that's what my issue was. Go to Equations, add Global Variable, once again, ribs. equation value. Now we'll click on 6, and there we go. Now it comes up. That's what I was expecting it to do. And we clicked it in. So the number of ribs is going to be equal to 6, and that's great. So the next thing we want to do is, now in the book, it had put together the whole pattern differently from the rib pattern. I lumped it all into one thing, and because I know in the book they're showing you how to make some of these equations, and I just kind of just realized that I'd skipped through that, and I don't really want to go and redo it. So now I have my ribs is equal to, I have an equation in there that says that ribs, that parameter ribs is equal to that 6. You know, I say all that and then I take a look in the book, and the entire point of the showing you the equations is based off that. So let's pull that hole out of the thing. So if I have the bolt hole and drag it, I can't move it to after the pattern because it's part of the pattern. So we're going to go in here, we're going to edit that pattern, and I'm going to take the bolt hole out of it. At least I thought I was going to take the bolt hole out of it. Let's go back in here, bolt hole, delete. There we go. And so now we've got that hole. Now we're going to make another pattern. So we'll go circular pattern, and we're going to pick, I'm not going to pick the rib pattern. Nope. We're going to pick the bolt hole. And then I'm going to circle it around there. We got 6 of them at 60 degrees apiece. Boom. And then let's rename this one to bolt circle. Okay, now we can go back into those equations that I was skipping, me and my efficient modeling. Okay, so the next thing that we want to do is we want to add an equation. And so we're going to add an equation here from our bolt circle. And we're going to say that dimension 1 of our bolt circle is equal to a global variable. We've made a global variable, which is our number of ribs. And so we're going to say that D1, which is the number of bolt holes that we have, is going to be equal to the number of ribs. And so we've kind of tied that together. So now if I go and I change this number of ribs to 5, it'll eliminate one of the holes to make them all the same. Okay. And so let's go, if we go to that rib pattern, and let's say that we'll change that to 3. And if we update that, that should, there we go. We've updated the bolts and the flanges. Now, they're kind of going in different directions, but that's okay because I do want to set them up to be completely symmetrical. So let's go back into our equations and let's play around with that a little bit more. So one thing that we want to do, let's go into the rib pattern, and I want to take, I'm going to add an equation, and I've got this dimension right here. And so now what I want to do is I want to build an equation based off of that. And so let's say equals, equals is already in there. And so we've got our functions, our properties, but what I want to do is I just want to type an equation. So 360 degrees divided by ribs. Now, we don't have that check mark there because we don't have a good equation, because that means we need to put the parentheses in so it recognizes that we're looking for a global variable. So that'll put the ribs at 120 degrees. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a equation. Now notice that that little sigma's there. That's telling you that that dimension's controlled by an equation. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this one here, and this is the 60 degrees. And what I'm going to do is I can type in the exact same equation for there. Or I'll just go in and say it's equal to the rib pattern. Have equal sign on. Oh, I got too many equals in there. So let's get rid of one of those. Oh, I thought that let me do that. Okay, it doesn't. I'm mixing up a couple different versions of SolidWorks, but that's fine. We're going to put in the same thing that we did before. So 360 divided by that word ribs. And so what that does is it goes, okay, well, we've defined ribs to be whatever is in that bolt pattern. Sorry, that rib pattern, which is 3. Ribs, same number of circles, and then an equation to put them at the perfect dimensions. We hit OK, and there we go. So it all gets everything going. Now the thing is I put these circles off at 30 degrees, but I want it to be in the middle there. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our equations, and now we're going to make another one. So I'm going to go to the bolt circle itself, and so I'm going to put that, I'm going to make an equation based off of that right there. And so what do I want that equation to be? Well, I want that equation to be halfway in between. I want that to be always halfway in between the ribs. And so we're going to make another equation here. Let's just throw together 360 divided by ribs. Okay. And so I'm going to take that whole thing, and I want to divide it by 2 because I want it to be right in the middle. And so that tells me 60 degrees, and I hit OK. And there we go. That moves it around. Okay, and so we can go all the way back here, and with just this one little, let's say 4, and there we go. We got 4 ribs, and they're all perfectly in the center. So sometimes when you're throwing down equations on things, it might take you a couple of times to go through it, just to figure out exactly how you want the stuff to behave. But it's a pretty handy thing to be able to put equations on your parts. And you can get really, really complex with this. It's all about how you want to do things and how you're going to model things. But it's a handy thing to have in your repertoire of modeling tools. And so this will complete the flange model for now. And so we'll be moving on to something else here in a second.